thank you, Brad, for joining our Tech to Exec podcast, and we'd like to welcome our millions of listeners eventually. We just started this, so we have
Great.
a little less than 1 million. But I'm Mike Linton, CEO of Valcom, and we're excited to have you.
And I'm Josh Linton. I'm the CIO of Valcom. And Brad, we like to start out just with you telling us a little bit about yourself, your journey, and kind of how you've come to be the VP at Crestron.
Yeah, so I've been here at Crestron for 5 years, and it's been a great journey to really get so close to integrators like you guys, but also end customers too. That's the most fun I have is always going to visit customers and see what they're doing with the technology. And I've seen all kinds of different customers, enterprises, education, a couple of government installations as well. And so I really love that. I started actually in residential smart home. And before that, actually in software startups and all that kind of
and totally awesome computers.
And
we
totally
looked at your
awesome
LinkedIn.
computers.
You wanted to jump over that. Is that
I
true?
did.
You kind of wanted to skip over that. I wanted to dig into that a little bit. Was that awesome? That's terrible for me to ask. Did you like it?
I loved it. It was such a great experience. Generally, I gloss over it unless we're at dinner and we're having a fun conversation and you want to hear wacky stories that are hard to believe. No, I really loved it. And actually, that's a place where I got a true appreciation for customer service and just taking care of people. And one of the interesting things I saw in that business is how quickly it grew and the loyal following that was garnered because of that commitment to just making sure that a customer was taken care of. Didn't matter, don't nickel and dime, don't make it tough for them, just take care of them. And then as soon as that ethos started to shift, then the business didn't work out so well. So it was a really great and interesting experience to see some wacky stuff, but also learn what is really important when you're building a business.
I love that lesson. I think we gloss over the early lessons we learn about just taking care of the customers. When you said that, and we work for a family business, our father started Valcom 2 years ago, and he would never get mad. Like our whole lives, we could be bad kids, everything, except for when the phone system went down and we couldn't take care of our customers. Like it was just like, I saw a different side of him. It was like, everything's an emergency, like things are not okay.
Right.
And I think it instilled that ethos of like, talk to your customers, take care of them no matter what. And so when you said that reminded me of that.
And then I went to a couple of different software startups, which was exciting, in terms of like the early Web 2.0, where, after the dot-com bubble burst, everybody kind of retrenched. And then there was this resurgence where you could see the potential for how software was beginning to change, on the internet, was beginning to change the way we interacted with content. And, this was right at the time, where the world shifted from MapQuest to Google Maps, right? Which was such a huge transformational change just because it was so simple and intuitive to use, right? It was the same time when, like Facebook, you went from like next, going through your story feed to this infinite scroll, right? But then more importantly was also a time where there was an integration between services where you could bring a lot of these different technologies together. So for instance, if you have Salesforce as your CRM and you're using Outlook, what if you could bring those together so that when you got an email from a lead or from a contact, you could just indicate that right there in the user interface and then save that in the CRM record. That was, the company I was at a startup, we were excited about that opportunity. We built tools to enable that, but that was right on that forefront of that shift. And since then, the internet, these apps, the mobile apps, and all of these services are so well integrated into our lives. It was exciting to be a part of that. And then I shifted into smart home, and I was actually at another smart home hardware and software company here in the Valley, and really began to understand better the integrator channel, delivering these solutions to homeowners, the magic of hardware plus software together. And that's when I really fell in love with this AV technology that we all spend so much time on. And then moved over here to Crestron, and now have gotten more deep into applying these technologies within a commercial space as well as a residential space.
Tell us about Crestron, like if your elevator pitch, and like what is Crestron for everyone that doesn't know, and people know it because it's got such a great brand, but tell us about what you would want them to know, like what it does from the simple, and then the things we don't know about
Right.
Crestron.
So there's one of the challenges we have is that from the beginning, Crestron has always been about solving problems for customers, and so we solve a wide variety of problems. But ultimately, what we're focused on is, every organization and family as well, right? Because we do commercial and residential, but every organization needs to share information. Whether you're in person or you're remote, you need to share information, you need to share content. So that's one core pillar of what we do, and we call that the content part of it. The second is every organization needs to collaborate. Again, whether you're in person, whether you have people that are remote, you need to enable really effective collaboration. And then the last one is you need to make a space super simple to use. And this is where control and integration comes in, and you want the ability for somebody to walk into a boardroom, push one button, and have everything work as they want, right? Have somebody that's leading a lecture in an auditorium at a university walk in and share whatever content they want. Or if you are doing a home, every family member should be comfortable using that space. So those are the three core areas where Crestron focuses a lot of attention: content, collaboration, and control. So that's all where we've invested so much time and energy to build products there. But something that people may not know unless they work directly with Crestron is something we call our True Blue commitment, which is the commitment that we make and the investments that we make to ensure that our integration partners and our end customers are successful. And so we wrap all of this great technology with this very hands-on partnership type of mentality, and we call that our True Blue commitment. So that's Crestron in a nutshell.
And we've seen that you have been a great partner. You've trained us well and helped us across even the COVID times when things were crazy. So we've seen that commitment. So thank you to you and your company. We appreciate Crestron.
You're just like your father set the tone for you. That all started with George Feldstein when he built the company, and we know it's integral to our success. And so the current CEO, Dan, he's doubling down on that same kind of commitment. So yeah,
that's amazing to see. I think when you can rely on, when your values really come through in your products, I think you can continue to be successful, and that's amazing to see from Crestron. One question that I had or would like to know, I just think these are cool, but what's one of the maybe coolest or funnest projects that you've been involved in? I mean, I think Crestron does so many amazing things, but what's one that you had just loved or that you love to share?
So there's a couple, and they're for different reasons. First, and you've probably seen some content on this one, and there's a lot of it on our site. But what we did with the New York Giants was super interesting, and that is taking over their draft room and being a part of this total digitization process that they went through. And at first glance, I was like, okay, great, guys, this is just a video wall, right? And that's it. But when they turn it on and then you walk through all of the specifics of what they do, it's so powerful, right? And it's just a good example of how you can apply the technology that we have to solve a real need, right? In this case, the head coach, Joe Shane, he had a view for how he wanted to run his draft process, which I don't know if I'm not a huge super football fan, but for Joe, he had a very detailed way that he wanted to run the draft, and they collect all of this data on all of the potential recruits. They need to talk to all of the recruiters that are all over the U.S. at that night, and then they need to stay plugged into everyone else that's going, all the other teams. And they were doing it on a whiteboard. They had all this stuff, whiteboard magnets, and they were just manually moving stuff all around. And Joe said, no, I want to do this digitally. I want to be able to see video clips. I want to see this database that we have created of all of these players with pictures and stats and details. And we want to be able to watch the news, and we want to be able to go to the web. And so he had this vision, and then we are able to apply all of this content distribution and control and collaboration technology into one system and build it exactly how he wanted to run his draft room. And it has been totally transformative to them and to their process. And so that was super cool. The other one was 2 years ago, I was in Copenhagen, and I was at the University of Copenhagen, and they have this really incredible multi-purpose space in their technology school. And what they like to do is they like to run these little hackathons with their students. And so they have this space that is designed so well to be able to come together, have a little kickoff session, break off into groups, and then come back together and show off whatever they have built throughout the course of the week. And the technology in that room is so flexible that a normal professor without extensive training to come in and kick off this hackathon, each group can go off and they can use the technology in one corner of the room for their session. And then when they do their little speed pitch, then each group moves around the room, but everybody can see the content that's on the screen. And what impressed me about that was that the AV manager at that university was so proud of what they built because it was their idea, right? And they made that come to life. And it was so flexible that they could really invite anyone in. And so it was cool. It was fun. It was fun to see just the space that they did, what they enabled, but more importantly, how excited they were and proud of what it was that they got to build. So that's what I really love about what we do.
How do you explain to someone that the possibilities of AV are beyond like what we think about as like connecting computer, just video? Like how have you seen technology leaders get the vision or executives get the vision when they don't know what they want and they don't know what's possible? Like, have you seen anybody do that well?
That is always the trickiest part, right? Because when we can do anything, right, and we struggle from like a marketing perspective. How do we tell the world we can do anything? Because then you end up like missing the point in connecting. What I've seen work well, and I've seen this in so many other applications, is you just have to ask a lot of questions. How do you run a meeting? What do you do? What would you like to do that you can't do today? Right? What kind of content do you bring in? Who else is involved? Do you run meetings in a way that you encourage a discussion between people, or is it just you presenting and you want all of the attention, or you want them to stay focused on you? Are you just conveying information? Are you leading a dialogue and having a conversation? So at the end of the day, it really comes down to, are we skilled at asking questions to extract all of that? And then we can use our craft. You have the skills, we have the skills to understand and synthesize what they're saying and apply the technology to solve that. I think that we're at a moment, though, that is really exciting for our industry, and that more and more executives are coming to the table with an idea of what they want. And I think that's great. And data shows that too, that more and more business line leaders are introduced to what some of the possibilities are. So they're coming with informed opinions about, hey, I'd like to do this, or I have expectations. Can we make this happen? So luckily that's happening. And then you can have a more sophisticated question. But even then, that just the baseline of ask a lot of questions to understand what they do and what they're interested in, that's the best way to try and find a connection.
Has anyone figured out how to get in the sales process or in the architecting the solution process. Hey, we're recording meetings and then we're using AI to tell us all the different ways that they interact, they collaborate, they share, and how simple they can, you want it I know it's complex on the back end. When we did our room, that looks very simple, and then the
Yep.
programming makes it
Yep.
be simple. I'm like, they spent a long time, and there's a lot that goes behind the install that I had no idea. I mean, it was a construction project,
Oh yeah.
which and I was like, what? We're a construction company? But and it really is like revamping a room into that detail. I'm just curious,
Yep.
has anyone figured out how to use AI in that process yet, or is that something that maybe wouldn't
I
work yet? We're not.
I think that I've heard of a couple of pockets. I'm sure that there are others that are leveraging it in really creative ways. One way that I heard was that there was a customer. They had multiple floors of like hoteling space, and they weren't exactly the same configuration. But what they found was one floor was booked all the time, and the other floor was not. And through analyzing the data with an AI engine, they uncovered that it was actually the what they offered on that first floor that they didn't have on the second floor was just simply a second monitor. And so by crunching through all of that data and looking for all of these commonalities and then applying the details and the specifics of what was available, then they gleaned those new insights like, hey, this is a preference that they have. Now, the individual employees may not have been able to say, yeah, I choose this because it has a second monitor. That's not enough. That's one data point, but that's not enough to spot a trend. So that's one instance where I have seen that. And I'm sure that there are still people that are taking all these disparate AI tools and applying them in a really clever way to pull that out. But we will get there to a point where AI services, between the transcription, things like visual AI that we're building into the intelligent video solutions, getting data around people counting and room utilization, that we can glean some more of those insights. I think that those will really be helpful in getting there, but it's all still nascent, right? The application of AI is still in the early, just like I was talking about with the Web 2.0 period, right? These new techniques of applying technology to change and improve the user experience, it takes time to iterate on that and then cover some new ways to apply it and get value from that.
That's super interesting. One of the things that I wanted to ask you as we were preparing for this, it seems to me like, and had you asked us 20 years ago, I'm not sure that we would have said we were going to be an AV kind of reseller, right? We're traditional IT, networking, server storage. And so it seems to me that there was this transition where AV became, got onto the network or became very network heavy. And I'm curious about how that transition impacted Crestron. Has that been a good thing, a bad thing? What have you seen maybe as the AV technology is becoming more and more just like everything else? It's on a network, it's wireless, it's wired. We need to involve the IT team all of a sudden, and
Right.
they don't really know AV. They think they might know it, but how has that impacted Crestron, or how have you seen that transition?
Yeah, I think that there are a couple of things that we have seen in that. We were very early in putting, as soon as you put an RJ45 on the back of a product, that's network, network becomes intrinsic to that. And that happened with Crestron, I think it was 20 years ago, around that time. But, there are several ways that we've seen a big shift in that AV and IT convergence. Certainly the buying cycles are changing, right? People are making different kinds of decisions. But I think that expectations are shifting too, right? And that is, IT managers have an expectation for how can I manage all of this product? They want to be able to remotely monitor that, update it, change it, right? AV managers might have been used to walking into a room, but IT managers, they're used to those kinds of tools to be able to manage that. So we've built a lot of cloud management and monitoring so that you can do that, right? Those are the tools they expect. Those are the tools that you need to be able to do. The other thing is that with IT managers, scale is super important, right? There is a lot of stuff that the IT team is required to manage, and so you have to be able to manage all of these things at scale. You can't always just treat it as this bespoke thing. And so how do you support the concepts of standardization, right? Common platforms, even in the scenario where a room might be slightly different from another one. So scale and standardization is super important. Security is another, right? Are you adhering to security standards to ensure that you can feel comfortable that the products that you're attaching to the network are going to be secure and not become a vector for somebody to come in and do something malicious with your organization? So this convergence has driven a lot of those requirements. But it's not only the IT and AV convergence that has driven that. It's also the expectations of the organization as it relates to this technology. I think that for the AV world, the fact that it is a part of IT, particularly in many organizations, it means it's a strategic tool to run the business, right? And it needs that type of oversight and management and professionalization. That's great because it is a proof point that what it is that we offer is truly business, is a business imperative and is strategic to operating that business. And so it needs to be everywhere, needs to run rock solid, and it's super, super valuable. So I think that it has been the trend of AV fitting under IT, but also the businesses really requiring this kind of strategic or view of making sure it's integrated well, has pulled us into this world. And I think that another consequence of that for Crestron is that we're getting closer to end customers alongside our integration partners, right? 10, 15, 20 years ago, we wouldn't have talked to an end customer, really. They wouldn't have called on us, right? It would have just been the integration channel. But now, so many of those customers are more sophisticated. They have their own expectations. They want to speak with us alongside integration partners like you. And so, that has been another shift that we have taken on. And we view that partnership with our integration partners as really important, but even more important, building that relationship with the customers so they feel comfortable making these long-term product decisions, and bringing a product into their organization. So it's been really interesting to see this shift, and I think we'll continue to see more and more of that. I think that will only accelerate in the years to come.
Yeah, I love hearing that. What, as we end here, what would you want people to know about Crestron, the AV landscape, how COVID changed the world? I mean, I'm leaving this. This is the most, and how it changed the AV world, because that was probably very helpful for Crestron in the world. We couldn't get product for a year. One of those 5 questions you can feel free to answer, and then but anything come to mind for any of those questions?
Yeah, I think there's so much, but I think that at the end of the day, one of the most important things is that COVID accelerated the leveraging of technology to run business. It opened up new opportunities and possibilities for the way businesses operate, and that will certainly continue forward, right? That will not slow down, that will just accelerate. And I think that we, as an AV industry and as those that are delivering these kinds of experiences, we have an opportunity to deliver the kinds of rooms that work on a Monday morning, right? You can just walk in and it works, right? And it delivers value to enable people to be more effective at their job and to do what they can do. The whole world was disrupted, right, over the last several years. And, as we move into this next chapter of the way business gets done, there will be more opportunity for people to leverage technology, not less, which I think is a great thing for all of us and for our industry. I think that's exciting, right? We don't have to worry that we're going to be obsolete or uninterested. We have all kinds of new opportunities in front of us. But the great part is we have the technology to answer and address those challenges today, right? Delivering and distributing content, right? Enabling collaboration, whether you're in person to share content and have a great meeting, or you need to bring somebody in hybrid, right? How do you make a space super simple and easy to use, right? Those are the core things. That's everything you need in order to meet this trend and these changes. And so I'm super excited about that. And I think that we can focus on really making people more effective at their job, right? Through this technology. And because they know what they want, or they have a better concept of that, we can have better conversations at delivering on that. So those are the things that excite me and they keep me going. And those are also the things that Crestron will continue to invest in. And we have a lot of really cool things coming out this year and early next year, just to keep pushing on all of those concepts.
It's great to be partners with you, and I love products and solutions that help people do better at their job, be more productive, to have a better life, right? Like the
Yep.
impact of good AV, I believe is life changing,
Yep.
and that it improves lives. It allows people to have a flexible, there's flexibility. Josh, right before you were telling the story of how something about a
Oh
doctor.
yeah, so we just had this quick story, and I don't know that it was Crestron technology, but we just had our first grandbaby was born,
Oh,
and we were at a
congrats.
hospital. It had some,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. It had some challenges, and at the hospital they didn't have the specialist that they needed, and so immediately they had, I think within a minute, they had this specialist doctor with a camera that could see the baby perfectly. They're talking to those who are in the room, and just the ability for them to diagnose and support this baby who is struggling um, within minutes. And somebody who's done this so many times, right? Just the comfort level as, being part of that was so rewarding and so comforting to know that, hey, we're getting the best care that we can possibly get. And it's these remote technologies that enable that is it's huge, right? And certainly helps all of us, I think, in our lives. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Right. That very visceral, you lived it, you saw the benefit and
yeah,
value of that, right? And
yeah,
that's what we do, right? And it's cool to be a part of that, right? And it is exciting. Again, make them more effective, right? Make them more
Yeah.
productive. Unlock wholly new capabilities, right?
Maybe
yeah.
it's not as fun that we expect everyone, even if they're on vacation, to be on our Monday morning meetings or to be logged in all the time. Yeah. No, we let people have time off. We do care that people enjoy life at work and at home. Well, Brad, thank you so much for the conversation. This is exactly what we wanted to get to know you, talk about Crestron, talk and appreciate our partnership. It matters a lot. We need you in order for us to take care of our customers. Our customers need us to have a strong partnership and to be great partners. And so we just really want to thank Crestron for that. And thanks for being part of the Tech to Exec podcast. We
Yeah.
appreciate that a lot. And um, I think that's all. Josh, any last
The
words?
only thing I typically say for our soon to be millions of listeners is we will have information about Crestron. If you want to learn more, we'll have them in the show notes. So make sure you check that out. But just echo what Mike said. Thanks for joining us, Brad. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you guys. Very fun to chat with you. Great to meet you. And again, thank you for your partnership too. I spoke with the team that works with you closely, and they really enjoy it. So, again, we really appreciate you guys too.